Thank you. Good morning. I'm not a morning person, but all of this woke me up. So, thank you for coming. I have to be honest. When they asked me for this month's talk, and they told me the topic, my first reaction was obviously, I mean, why me? Do I look that lost? As if being lost is almost by definition a bad thing, and it often is. I mean, like. When a TV show is called Lost in Space, it doesn't mean that you're on a pleasant vacation to Mars. I mean, it literally means that you're screwed in space. And when a TV show is called Lost, it gets even worse. Or worse, by the end of the last season of Lost, they actually lost all of their viewers. Um, and when a movie is called Lost in Translation, it's not just about two people who are unable to communicate with people around them. Again, it gets even worse than that. It's also about two people, not really knowing where they are in life at that moment. But that was actually precisely the beauty of that movie, Lost in Translation. Um, because quite honestly, if they if those two characters, like Scarlett Johansson and Bill Murray, if they actually had known what to do next, if they had bought a copy of Lonely Planet Tokyo, um, they never would have met, and we never would have been witness to their wonderful chemistry, which in part came from the fact that they were both lost. So being lost can also be, I feel, a really good thing. Now, in preparation of this talk, I had a conversation with two girls from Creative Mornings, and one of them actually mentioned that being lost, or just getting lost, that's her way to travel. That's really how she likes to travel, and I started thinking about that because I mean I think that's also how I prefer to travel. It took me at least 15 trips to New York and a full year of living there to actually see the Statue of Liberty. And even that was by accident. And you know what? I mean, when I when I finally did see it, it looked exactly like in the movies, only a bit smaller. Um, and I really don't mean to sound arrogant, but that's really most of the time the case with these tourist traps. Like they look exactly what you think they will look like, just sometimes a bit smaller or a bit bigger, and then you move on to the next tourist trap. And let's be honest, you never truly get to experience a city that way because you're never going to meet real New Yorkers there. Real New Yorkers, they don't go to the Statue of Liberty. And real New Yorkers, they walk around Times Square in a 2-block radius because they want to avoid you, like tourists. I know that sounds arrogant, but you mean they're New Yorkers, so they are arrogant. Um, but that's just not how you get to know a city. Um, um, so if you really want to experience a city, if you want to feel its heart, if you want to get to know its people, I think you have to be prepared to get lost, to just start walking and meet people along the way. That's the only thing. That's the only way I think to discover something fresh, not just in New York, but just anywhere on Earth or whatever you're doing. And that's how I got to know New York and LA and so many other places on Earth. I'm gonna tell you a story about New York and one of the first times that I was there. I don't think it's gonna get anyone killed anymore. I hope so. Um, so on one of my first trips to New York, this was some 20 years ago. I met someone who walked me around town, and at the end of the day, she said she still needed to pick something up. And I know we were walking around Manhattan, and I think it was, I can't remember, it's too long ago, but I think it was the West Village or Chelsea, because it was, quite a posh neighborhood. And we're walking down this fancy block, all brownstone houses, and all of a sudden, my friend, she walks to this nondescript door. She knocks on the door. I think it was like a secret knock, but I can't remember, but it must have been. And then the sliding peephole slides open, and two eyes stare at me first because I was a lot taller than my friend, and then the eyes notice her, and soon enough because the ice noticed her, the door opens and we are welcomed in. Now, at this point, I'm still thinking this is going to be, one of those infamous speakeasies, where people during the Prohibition used to go to drink alcohol. Obviously, 20 years ago, and today they're just for show, but they still exist. And while I'm thinking all this, my friend leads me down a set of stairs to the basement of the building. And, well, we end up in a small bar. It's not a fancy cocktail bar. Then there are no fancy cocktails. There's like two guys shooting pool, four people sitting at a table, and I think two people sitting at the bar. And behind that bar is a guy called Frankie, a mob name if ever there was one. And sure enough, my friend orders two beers for us and Coke, not Coca-Cola, cocaine. Like, I can't remember if the Sopranos were already on TV back then, but that is really what it. Looking back at it, what it felt like. Like I was in the scene of the Sopranos, and with this guy, this old Italian American guy called Frankie, big white hair, big white mustache, and apparently he had served 20 years in prison for something he wouldn't say, and he kept his mouth shut, and because of that, they rewarded him with this very very private bar. Somewhere in Chelsea in a basement, so he could, deal drugs and make some money. Now, the funny thing was, like, there was nothing remotely dangerous about all of that situation. Like, Frankie was just a really cool, chill guy. We ended up actually having two beers there. And when I finally then went to sleep at night, I just knew that I had experienced something truly unique, something no tourist will ever experience. I didn't get to see the Statue of Liberty that day. I didn't get to see the Naked Cowboy on Times Square. I didn't nag to my new friend to go see a Broadway musical, because I'm sure she would have dumped me. What I did get was like a slice of New York, a slice I did not know existed. I mean, not in that neighborhood, but not even at all. Like, it all seemed like a too perfect scene from a mafia TV show, but it actually does exist, those things. And this is of course a very extreme example. This is also why I still remember it so vividly, that whole day. But my point is, if you allow yourself to go off the beaten path, weird and memorable shit will happen to you. And while I was definitely off the beaten path that day, I mean, I was in places I wasn't supposed to be in, I did not feel lost. In a way, it really felt very much like I needed to be there and experiencing something truly unique. I felt part of New York City a lot more than, standing in front of the Statue of Liberty. Because I had allowed myself, I think, to get lost. Now, in case you're starting to wonder, what does all of this have to do with creativity? In my mind, a lot. Because the way I travel, I mean, when I started to think about it, when I started to think about this talk, it's also the way I work, the way I guess I lead my life. I'm really keen to go to places that I'm not sure of. I'm not sure if they even exist. So let me give you another example. When Red Bull came looking for me, or came knocking 10 years ago, to curate an exhibition on Belgian nightlife, my answer was basically, that might be a bit boring. Why not do something else? Why not, instead of do this one-off thing, why not create a lasting online platform for Belgian nightlife? Yeah, at the time, I guess I could have taken the money. It was nice money. It was good money. I could have curated the exhibition, but it just felt like it was too obvious. It was too easy. It was very unchallenging, uninspiring even. So instead, I started to work on what would eventually become Red Bull Electropedia, and I actually ended up making a lot more money because 10 years later, I'm still working on it with 6 other people. And when I started a photo gallery about 8 years ago with a friend of mine, I guess we could have started a regular photo gallery, and sell expensive pictures and make money. But the first thing we did was something with Moby, amateur photographer, and we got a lot of press with that. And then the second thing we did was a phonography exhibition. Like this was 8 years ago. Like iPhones were brand new, and especially an iPhonography exhibition was really brand new. And we got a lot of press with that. And then the second summer we had the gallery. Like we couldn't be there that summer, so we put out a competition for people to someone creative to win the keys to the gallery all summer long. All included, electricity, internet, whatever. It was all included, and we got a lot of press with that. And I mean, there's a lot of people who still think, I think, that we did all of those things just for the publicity, but the free publicity was always just like a fortunate outcome. We did all those things because we were just curious to see what would happen, how people would respond. I mean, we had no idea when we started all of those things where these ideas would take us, and that's what really made them interesting, I guess. I mean, to us, but also to many other people, and that's really why we did it. We didn't mind getting lost. We actually liked getting lost. And I know that there were other galleries that really looked down on us, although we also did some, serious exhibitions. But quite honestly, we had fun, and not with every idea, but with some of those ideas, silly ideas, we actually made some money. So I'm telling you all this, or while I'm telling you all this, I'm just trying to think, should you be interested? Some advice in this matter, like. So how do you do it then? Is there something like getting lost for dummies? But the thing is, of course, I mean, there are no rules to getting lost. That would be completely contradictory. Any rule would basically undo the whole thing. You would no longer be lost. And I have noticed throughout my career that can be very frustrating. I mean, having worked with many people in many different fields, I've noticed that thing, just getting lost, being lost, it doesn't come natural to some people. To some people it does, and to a lot of other people, they really struggle with that. Like, when I was working at De Morgen as a cultural editor-in-chief about a year ago, people would often ask me, interns especially, like, how to write a particular article, what to put first, what to put last, the tone of the article, and etc. And I would often answer, well, instead of saying put this first and this last, and just think of it as jazz, like, which is the lousiest answer to give someone who does not understand jazz. To be clear, like I really like a good pop song. Like I'm generally Madonna's number one fan, and I mean, fuck Beethoven, George Michael is the best composer of all time. But pop music is by design very unlost. You get a verse, a chorus, a verse, a bridge, maybe also a drop these days, another verse, and if you're lucky, a chorus. Jazz, on the other hand, it really is like the art of being lost to perfection. If pop goes here, here, and here, jazz goes here, then here, and here, and back there, and it's basically like musical kung fu. But it's not random. I mean, there's a self-assurance to the madness of jazz. It dares to go where, to places people don't expect. To places people didn't know existed. But that's okay, because there's like a real artistry to jazz. It's got soul. It makes sense, even though it does not abide by any rules. Great jazz is actually 100% creative. Maybe that's also why I eventually left my job at the newspaper, because the longer I stayed there, the more apparent it became that there is very little room for a newspaper to go to places people don't expect or didn't know existed. That's not a criticism per se, but the newspaper business is a very old business, and very old businesses tend to have a very hard time reinventing themselves. In the end, it weren't the big labels that saved the music industry. It was Spotify. It was an outsider that came up with an idea that was so far out there, so out of the box, so completely lost to any record company executive. They couldn't have. The only one who could actually come up with that was an outsider. And I really believe that those outside ideas, they are inside all of us. They're even inside that record, that old record company executive. But society or our job or gradually all of those things that they tend to filter out those great ideas, I think. Like when you're 18, you have all these crazy ideas, silly ideas, and you brag about them. You have them all the time, and you talk to them to your friends, and sometimes you laugh about them. But you have like a shitload of crazy ideas when you're 18, and then by the time you're 35, you find yourself doing the same stuff over and over again for the next 35 years, because like along the way a lot of people came, you met, and they entered your life, and some people would say, well, I think that idea is shit, and you get the feeling along the way that maybe it's time to grow up now and stop having these really silly ideas. And the thing is, probably some of your ideas at age 18 or 25, probably they were shit because you lacked experience. And others were probably brilliant because you lacked experience. So by the time people turn 35, they tend to just rely on experience. I've noticed. And they leave a lot of those crazy ideas behind because they feel too much of a hassle, because the outcome is unknown, especially. You might get lost, and you can't afford to get lost anymore. I mean, you used to be able to afford that, but now you can't. You got bills to pay, kids to feed, all of that. When in fact, I mean, really, like crazy ideas and experience, those two things combined, that's the holy grail. So yeah, I believe that crazy ideas and being truly creative, that all comes from being lost, from not knowing where you're going, and being okay with that. Like it was when you were 18. It didn't matter where you were going. Like you were going in some direction, but you didn't worry about it too much. And then you grow older and you start to worry. And I get that. I really get that. That the older you get, the scarier it gets. But still, I think you just have to force yourself to do it. I'm 41 now. I'm gonna be dad next year. And when I left the newspaper beginning of this year, after about a month of not having work, hanging around, taking a break, spending too much time in coffee shops, I was like, fuck, what am I gonna do now? I really started to panic. And that can hold you back. Like it can scare you into playing safe. Luckily, 10 months later, I'm back to fuck, what am I going to say no to next? So that's comfortable. And I've really thought about it, because people at Creative Mornings, they asked me, like, so what then made you succeed? What made you so confident? Can you teach someone how to get lost, how to be jazz? And the answer is like, I don't know. I mean, no, seriously, like, I wish I could. I mean, maybe if you want to be more jazz, you have to start listening to some jazz. Coltrane, Mingus stuff, if you want to start with that. But no, I mean, I did give it some thought. And over the course of the last 20 years, I believe I did pick up like two things that really helped me be the way I am. Like, I'm not saying you should be the way I am. It's not always like, I mean, there's easier ways to go through life, but I think I did pick up a few things. Well, actually two. The first thing that might surprise people, or it may not, but meditation has actually been a very powerful factor in my life. It has the potential to be an even more powerful factor in my life if I actually managed to do it daily. But even though I can't do it daily, or I can, but like a billion things will always interfere with that. The magic for me of meditation is that I still feel its power, even long after I last meditated. And meditation is also, I guess, a way of getting lost without really getting lost. I mean, when I meditate, I don't feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm resting and nurturing my mind. And at the same time, I now also go to the gym about 4 times a week at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm not saying this to brag, obviously, because I mean there's very little to brag. But but that's obviously not really what's the most important thing about that. The most important thing about me going to the gym is that, or just anything, meditation, is that you need to take care of yourself, of your mind and of your body, for creativity to flow. Trust me on this. I'm 41. I'm old. I know what I'm talking about. Um, but no, I really do. I mean, when I was a bit younger, I once heard John Cleese say in an interview, like the British comedian, he once said in an interview on the radio, in order to be creative, you can't be busy. And then the journalist went like, yeah, but people need to make a living, so they're busy doing that. And then Cleese said, well, yeah, okay, but that's a choice you make, but then you can't be creative. And and I really hated him for saying that when I think it was like 24 or 25 at the time, because you know I, I was, as most people in their 20s do, I was working 24/7 at the time, and I felt that was a good thing because I was able to afford an expensive beamer and sound system to watch movies on, and I was living in a nice house, and I was doing all of that as like a freelance journalist, like I was supposed to be starving, but I wasn't. So I felt like no, I'm doing great here, and and then John Cleese comes along and he tells me that I could not be truly creative at that time, and I just thought, well, fuck him, and but today I believe he was right. I still hate him because now he supports Brexit, and he's turned into this very old white conservative guy. But yeah, no, I think he was right. Getting lost in order to be creative, and being too busy, that's not a great match. And instinctively, we all know that. I mean, we can kid ourselves, but we know it's true. You need to make time for yourself. So the second thing, and in closing, I picked up in the last 20 years, which might even make some people's eyes turn even more than meditation. My second advice is live abroad, move. I'm serious. I mean, not for a couple of months, but let's say 2 years. I think 2 years is perfect to go outside of Belgium. You need about a year to shake off that I'm on an extended holiday kind of feeling, and to truly start mixing the life with the new life you're leading. And it doesn't have to be New York, like in our case. It doesn't. It's not about going somewhere to meet people and start a new business, and that's really not why I'm saying this. That's not why you should do it. It's about, this is the most important thing. It's about not knowing again what will happen. About experiencing life not the way you know it, and really being open to experiencing new things, meeting new people. It's about hitting some sort of reset button that lets you evaluate everything you were taught or picked up along the way, and really look at your life from an outsider's perspective, while inevitably also learning so much from the country and the people you're visiting, and actually also starting to appreciate so much more the country and the people you left behind. I often imagine, and this is going to sound crazy, but I think this is like the best idea ever. I imagine that as a country, if we just gave like 5,000 people 50,000 euro a year to go live abroad for about 2 years, not in some fancy embassy, like as an ambassador and make business deals, but really like live among people all over the world in different countries. And then after those 2 years, like those 5,000 people come back, we would be the richest country in the world in terms of ideas and understanding. Now, unfortunately, there is no such thing. Like, I'm not going to give you 50,000 to move abroad. This government definitely will not give you that money. So you basically will have to need to pay for it yourself. But you have to do it. And if you feel you can't do that because something like that will set you off course, and it will derail your future, and it will destroy everything you've built in the last couple of months and years, to quote Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop, bullshit. There is not a client, not a company, not an employer, not an investor on earth who will find you less interesting because you lived outside of this tiny dot on the world map called Belgium for 2 years. Trust me, he will find you a lot more interesting. So yeah, basically, I mean, that's I think the best advice I can give anyone from experience. I did it myself for 2.5 years. Sure, New York, it was cool, but it was so enriching on so many levels. So basically, you have two options. Starting tomorrow, you either start meditating and go to the gym daily, or you open your browser, you type in random.country, and whatever pops up, that's where we will have breakfast in about a year. Of course, you will be paying for it, but no, I think that's just the two things of advice, pieces of advice I want to give you. Thank you, and let's have coffee.